So the first things, we do have a couple of rules. We want to make sure this conversation is, moving along. So the first thing is respect. You guys know what that is. I don't have to explain that to you. So the no identifiers is just keep it to I statements. So like, don't name people like Mr. So-and-so and this person with this shirt, or like, you don't just try to keep it to I statements when you're sharing stories about other people. And then Vegas rule is what happens here stays here. So if anyone's like sharing anything vulnerable, don't take it out and like tell everyone about it. And then one mic is one person speaks at a time, and then be mindful of other people's times, be present, be here. And then step up, step down is if you notice yourself participating a little too much, give some other people a chance. And then if you're not participating, try to step up and, join in on the conversation. And then lastly, have fun. We're so excited to have you here. And I'm going to pass it to Elizabeth.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, this is part of a whole series where we really hope that students can walk away with tools and tips and hear from speakers who have experience all about what it means to be an organizer and how you can become one. So today, we're hoping to help everyone understand why organizing is an effective method of accomplishing any social change or just social justice or political goals they might have. So what is organizing? I know it's a broad term, but there's an umbrella underneath it of what it can mean. And organizing can be political organizing. It can be at the national level, like a presidential campaign. It can be at the state level, the local level, the town level. It can be, social justice organizing. It can be for policy issues, housing. It can be for labor issues, community issues, as basic as, organizing to put a stop sign on your street.
Turn that down.
So there's kind of a complex definition of, what organizing can be, but to break it down, it really is just to achieve long-term change through building powerful and public relationships. It's about influencing and negotiating with government, institutions, corporations, community stakeholders. And really the goal is just to achieve direct representation and holding decision makers accountable to the people through public action. So really, like, social movements don't just happen. They need to be organized. People need to come together. And it's simply just turning shared ideas, values into action, identifying community problems and coming up with those solutions, and then engaging existing power structures, those people in charge, government, community leaders, to make those solutions a reality. And at the end of the day, it really is just all about identifying and recruiting and developing relationships that turn into leadership. But I will let our speakers get more into what it actually means to be an organizer later on.
So what do you think about organizing? Do you have any experience? If you do have experience in organizing, if you just want to put a thumbs up on your reactions, that'd be awesome. Or if you want to share any stories, feel free to raise your hand. And if you have any questions about organizing and what it is right now, you can also raise your hand and we'll try our best to help you out.
Also throw it in the chat, if you have an experience or if you have a thought as to what it means, go for it.
I'm not seeing any hands right now, so we're just going to move on to the video. So this video is just a video on organizing and why it's important in activism. So I'm just going to play it, and if you have any thoughts, please put them in the chat. We're always monitoring that.
I'm Dolores Huerta, and I am 87 years old, and I have been an activist since I was 25. That's 62 years, and I'm still going strong. I do believe that the people that are being affected by the issues are the best ones that can solve them. We started the National Farm Workers Association with Cesar Chavez, which became the United Farm Workers of America. Knowing that ordinary people have the power to come together to organize and that they can change policies. This is what really engaged me and really changed my life. And eventually I left being a school teacher to become an organizer. The pivotal moment in my life came when I met this great man named Fred Roth Sr. And I went to a meeting where he showed us pictures of people who had organized themselves. By registering to vote, he elected the first Latino to the Los Angeles City Council. The most effective way to make changes is by organizing, especially at the grassroots level. I call going door to door, canvassing, organizing 101, because this is where you can really engage with the voter and explain the issues to them. People get confused, and so they just throw up their hands and they don't vote. But we have to say to people, vote for what you're confident in voting, even if you have to leave some of the spaces blank. The important thing is to get in there and vote. We're seeing a new dawn of resistance, a new dawn of movements, and if we don't act responsibly, if we don't engage, then we have only ourselves to blame.
Awesome. So now we're going to...
I'm Dolores Huerta, and
Okay, now we're going to hear from professional organizers, our speakers today. So we have Councilwoman Mehreen and Suffolk alum and organizer Isaac Boateng. First, we're gonna hear from Councilwoman Mehreen. She's a councilwoman for Wakefield, and she's also the policy director for Planned Parenthood in Massachusetts. These are just some of the questions that she's gonna get to. And if you have any questions while these speakers speak, please just drop them in the chat. And at the end, we'll also give time for people to ask questions. So I'm gonna stop sharing so you can see her and have her speak.
I will get used to Zoom. Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. So my name's Mehreen, and I always start by saying, I just want to know if there's any people from Wakefield. I know Lizzie's from Wakefield, but anyone else? It's always good to know who's in the audience. And then I just want to say everything that I say today are my thoughts and my thoughts only. I'm not representing anyone but me. So you're going to get full on Mehreen tonight and not anyone else. So when Lizzie asked me to speak today, I had to take a moment because I don't consider myself an organizer, right? I went to law school. I'm a lobbyist in the state of Massachusetts. I work on policy issues. And then I thought about it. And I'm like, but I convince people to do social change. And I was like, oh, I am an organizer. Like I need to add that to my resume. So I will add that after this. As mentioned, my day job is I'm the Associate Director of Government Affairs and Policy at Planned Parenthood League of Massachusetts. I've been there for about 1.5 years. And before that, I worked at health-related organizations. So I worked at Rosie's Place, which is the oldest women's shelter in the country. I worked at the State House for the legislature. And then I worked on political campaigns. So I was the campaign staffer in 2018 for a statewide campaign. So I got to work on social justice issues in my professional life. I work on healthcare and trans rights and economic justice, anti-poverty, abortion access, voting expansion, all of those issues I got to do in my day job. And all those wins that we've had in the state of Massachusetts on healthcare and trans rights and increasing the minimum wage to $15 and making public benefits better, that's all come through organizing. It's people across the state making phone calls, knocking on doors, sending postcards, talking to their neighbors, calling their elected officials, calling the governor. So if you care, whether you're starting your career or just an 11-year-old, if you care about social justice, economic justice, health justice, then you need to organize. So that's my day job, and I get to do that on my day job. And then at night, my nighttime unpaid volunteer position, as my father likes to remind me, I don't get paid for doing it, is I'm a Wakefield Town Councilor. And through that work, I get to work on campaigns for elected throughout the state, and we get to organize in my town. So a few examples: we changed our board name to a gender neutral name. We used to be a selectman and nobody knew what a selectman was. And so we ran a 17th month campaign because we had to change our town charter. Our town constitutions called us selectmen. And so it was a 17th month with 2 townwide votes and a ballot question to change it to the gender neutral town councilor. We organized to get a pride flag in the town for the month of June. And then we organized to get funding for renovations of a public safety building or to have our library be open 7 days a week. That's all examples of organizing. I like to say that I do organizing because my one goal of being an elected and working on these issues is to be that voice for people that don't have a voice. So I'm really lucky to have a seat at the table. But I just get one vote. To accomplish anything, I need people to help amplify that vote and help amplify that message. So a little bit, I'm supposed to kind of give advice, and I kind of give this all the time, right? Is find causes or candidates that you care about. So climate change, reproductive health, ranked choice voting, Medicare for all. There's a new campaign to name a new Massachusetts state dinosaur if you really care about dinosaurs. Find a cause that you care about, right? Or find a candidate. So we just had our national elections. Like, it's great to find a national candidate, but find someone local. Find a mayor from Framingham who's the first woman mayor in Framingham. Support a local person in Wakefield. Just find someone who inspires you, who thinks like you, and volunteer for that campaign. And sometimes when you volunteer, they turn into full-time positions. They full-time got jobs, which is great. But the best thing about organizing, and I say this all the time, and I'm saying it as I look to all of you on this Zoom screen, right? There's not a lot of us that spend our Thursday nights having these conversations. Like, this is not everyone's idea of fun, but this is our idea of fun, to talk about organizing and social causes and how we're going to make the world better. And so what I've loved about organizing and doing this work is that I found other people who think and act like me. I have found my best friends. I have found jobs through this, but I found people who I want to spend my free time with. And I think that's really the best thing about organizing. Like, yes, I've made the world better for a lot of people working on important issues, but I've also found people who I like hanging around with. And as once we're past pandemic, that's like kind of the most important thing, I think, is just finding like-minded people that you want to spend time with. So that's just a little bit about me and what I work on, and happy to answer any questions.
Please put your questions in the chat. I'm going to go back to sharing. We're going to hear from our next speaker, and then we'll do all of the questions. Thank you so much, Mehreen, for speaking.
So next we have Isaac, who is actually a Suffolk alum. He graduated in 2017, and he has experience in community organizing, and also he's a big advocate for social justice. So I will let him introduce himself and take it away.
Thank you, Saeed. Good evening, everybody. My name is Isaac Boateng, born in Ghana, raised in Worcester, Massachusetts. So if any Worcester folks out there, hey, parents immigrated to the U.S. from Ghana. I'm currently living in the D.C. metro area, working in D.C. government as a special assistant to the director of D.C. Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. When I think about organizing, I think about the number of people that show up. I think about what's going on in your community and how effective you can make that happen. When I was a sophomore in high school, I started my own basketball program in the city of Worcester, working with all youth from all around the city, engaging them on how they can advocate for themselves, but also how they can morally just step up to ask their elected officials what are they doing to make a difference in their community. But primarily, I'm a Ghanaian. I'm from Ghana. And so in Worcester, there's a large population of Ghanaians in Worcester. And most of my players that played for me were all from Ghana and Nigeria. And so when I think about organizing, I think about the fact that as an African, what are we doing to engage? What are we doing to actually speak to leaders and to bring solutions to that. And so I wanted to get all the African community to be civically engaged in our system. Because for most parents, their kids were placed in ESL classes despite that Ghanaians and Nigerians were colonized by the British. But they couldn't navigate a system, right? I'm an immigrant. I'm a proud immigrant. And so when I first came here, I did not understand how to navigate a system. And so what I did was I formed the African Council with many other leaders from Worcester. And the topic of the conversation was to teach our African community of who the leaders are, right? Because at some point, right, you have leaders come in your community asking questions, asking for your vote, asking, hey, I need your support. But as Africans, we were like, okay, we're gonna vote for them. We'll vote, we'll support. But we had to educate them on who they, why they vote for that person, and also ask questions to those leaders. And also teaching them about their rights, right? Because as an immigrant, you get scared. You get scared no matter who comes to your door. I know definitely, when folks were doing the census and, door knocking during this election, folks were scared. And so, it was governed by the fact that we had to teach them about what their rights are. But also, I also did a get out the vote for a lot of Africans because Worcester has so many registered voters, Ghanaians in Worcester. All our leaders came together. It was unified together where we asked questions. I worked on campaigns, right? Organizing campaigns, ensuring the fact that not just my folks were heard, but making sure the youth, Black and brown youth are heard, ensuring the fact that gathering, just organizing is not just because you want to strive for something. It's a passion. It's what you want to do. It's what drives you to success. And so it was the fact that when I worked on campaigns, I say, young people, we got to come together. We have to come together, and we have to ensure the fact that whoever we elect, we hold them accountable. And so when you organize, you have to build on a purpose of foundation of what you're going for, right? And so for me, when I organize, I look at the fact of, okay, healthcare is one of my big topics, right? Healthcare, immigration, and education, right? If we look at these three topics, all those topics are all seen that as Black and brown and even immigrants, it's degraded. And so when I think about organizing, how I got involved was I made sure to go and talk to my elected officials because I know for a fact that they came to my community and they came and preached to me. And so I want to hold them accountable and ask them, hey, what are you doing about the grocery stores that are not in my neighborhood? What are you doing about the officer who brutalized this innocent Black and brown kid? What are you doing for the purpose of education? Of getting good books, bringing technology, educating us about what's going on. And so when I think about that, I think about me. I came in when I was 6 years old, and not everybody I know knew exactly how to organize. I started just as a young kid working on the governor's campaign, Deval Patrick Tamara's campaign, and gathering all the Africans together. And at the end of the day, we had a voice. We had a voice. The former governor, Deval Patrick, made African Day on June 15th, recognized all Africans, diaspora in the state. And that's the power of voice. That's the power of bringing people together. And so my advice I would say is that the world is run by those who show up, right? And so me and Mehreen can sit here and preach to you and talk to you, but I say to you is that you got to be a go-getter, right? Because if you preach, you got to do the talk too, right? You got to do the walk too. And so when I think about organizing, I think about what's passionate about me, and also results driven, and holding your elected officials accountable. Please do not sway away from just because they have a D next to the name or the R next to the name, you gotta just say we're gonna support them. Hold them accountable, because you know what, at the end of the day, they are the ones who show up to your door and ask for your vote. And so that's what I'll leave it at.
Thank you for that. And thank you both so much for coming to speak. And we have some questions, and I'm sure a lot of the audience has questions as well. So if you don't feel comfortable just asking it, put it in the chat. One question that I have is, when you're organizing and you're reaching out to people, either whether it's community members or like elected officials, there are going to be setbacks. Like people are going to shut doors in your faces. They're going to tell you no. Like people won't show up to your events. Like how do you deal with these setbacks of like, and how do you then, like after you deal with them, like how do you overcome them and how do you keep on going?
Do you want to go, Mehreen?
Yeah, I can go. It's not easy. If this work was easy, we'd like problem solved and we'd move on to the next thing, right? And it is a struggle, and the struggle is real. I am a big fan of celebrating the moments and thinking about the moments in the movement. And I'm a big proponent of like every step we have to celebrate. And you take those hard hits and like know that that sometimes you don't have victory and it's a slap in the face, but you just keep on going. I mean, I think also it's Isaac kind of talked about this, but it's those one-on-one conversations, right? And so you have an event, you've had these one-on-one conversations, people are going to show up because they like you. I always joke that I know when I meet people and I knock on their doors, like they do like me, right? They might not agree with me politically, but they like me as a person, and I get them on my side. And some of my like biggest campaign donors have been from people on the other side of the political spectrum, but they know that I want what's good for Wakefield and I'm going to work hard on that. They might not agree with me on national issues and they will tell me that they did not vote for the same people that I voted for, but they know in my town I want the same thing, right? I want us to have healthy lives for our families and our kids. I want our lake to be clean. I want our library to be open. I want our police not to, have biases as they're pulling people over. They know that we want the same sort of stuff. So I think I really focus on celebrating the little victories, and anyone that's worked with me will like laugh. Like I'm like, look, you got like 10 new Facebook followers. Like, let's celebrate that. But I think that's really important, right? You got to celebrate all little victories. There's not always a lot of them. And so find those moments, and you planned an event that's successful, so you didn't pack it, that's fine. You had a really good playlist lined up, celebrate that. And it's you take the good and the bad, but I think you always remember that movements take a while. I'm gonna answer Rose's question too, because it's a little related about building up the momentum. And like I said, I think this work that we're doing is really movement work. It is not moment work. And so you think about increasing, you do the little steps. And so the example of Massachusetts is we increased the minimum wage to $15. The Raise Up Coalition did that. Like, we didn't solve economic injustice, right? Like, no, the next session we came back and we said, hey, now we need paid family leave. And now we're fighting for sick leave, emergency sick leave during COVID, right? Like we have other struggles. And so I think if you believe in the end goal of economic justice, like there's steps, if you believe in true immigration reform, just because we stop building the wall doesn't mean that like we all get to go home and celebrate, right? Like we got to work on Dreamers, and we got to work on asylum reform and refugee reform. And so I think, and the other side will say that you keep on moving the goalposts. Like we gave you $15 an hour, like go home now. And I think as organizers, you just have to keep on thinking that like, to maintain that momentum is think at the long term. It is not easy, but there's a goal, there's an end goal of justice and equality and equity in sight. And so you just have those little steps to get there. And hopefully you've built your coalition and you get to hang out with friends. And so people want to keep on hanging out with you. And so that's how you also maintain the momentum.
Elizabeth, can you ask the first question again? Sorry.
Yeah, so when like dealing with organizing, obviously you're gonna like deal with setbacks, like people, like elected officials telling you no, like people not coming to your events, like not gaining the coalition that you want. So like how do you deal with setbacks in organizing, and like how do you overcome them and like keep going?
You know, when I first started organizing, not every time was I received the same numbers turnout. I think what really overcame that was showing up to people's community events. I think that speaking to the ward chair, the folks who actually run those meetings and showing up there, and bringing a flyer. And also what I would also say, overcame that was also the fact that I got the number of the leaders, right? The leaders who ran those meetings. And so I would always text them or, call them and say, I'm going to be at your next meeting and I want to, can I get some time to talk to your group? And I think that helped out a lot when I began my basketball team, when I began the African Council, was talking to different communities, going to churches and talking to pastors, going to big parties and advocating for what I want to believe, what I believe in. And so that's one thing, when I knew I fell down, I knew that I can also pick myself up again by just being, hey, I'm here. I'm the annoying guy here. I need your help, in that aspect of that. And I know the other Rose's question was, how is the best way to maintain momentum of your organization after you have started? Keep it going. Find new things that are happening, right? That you feel that your organization could get involved in, right? Or find things that are not clicking, right? So like if you see like a law being passed, right, by your elected official and they voted for that, and you're like, oh my gosh, no. You can walk up to their office or send them a letter or get your group to write them a letter and say, hey, we asked you to advocate for this bill, but yet you voted for it. Keep the momentum going because at the end of the day, your organization is not going to fall down. It will fall down when you lose faith. It will fall down if you give up. And so always find different type of things that are happening within your community to keep your organization going.
Thank you for that.
And I think Catherine asked a question.
Yeah, so Catherine asked in the chat, how can I get involved if I have no experience with organizing? What should my first steps be?
So Catherine, I'm going to push back on you, and I can't even see you and I don't know you, but there's no way that you don't have experience with organizing. So that's like, all of us are organizers. We've done it somehow. And I have this conversation in my town all the time where I try to get more underrepresented, primarily women, to serve on our boards, volunteer. They don't have to run, but I want them to like serve because they're primarily older white men. And I'll have friends tell me like, I'm not qualified to do that. And my favorite story was I had a friend who, she's like, I'm just not qualified to serve on the finance committee. And I was like, you are a senior VP at a bank. You have 3 graduate degrees. You run your household with your 2 kids. You're paying off your student loans. You have a summer home in the Cape. Like, why do you think you don't understand finances when that's all that you do? Oh, you also manage your daughter's Girl Scout troop and all of like selling cookies, and you manage your son's soccer team. Like, all of those are skill sets that go into serving, to go into finance, but those are all also organizational skills, right? Like, as Isaac said, like he put together like a basketball team. Like, that is organizing, right? And people who like, I love that people of faith, you do so much with your church group and you don't think about that as volunteering, but that's organizing when you get people together on whatever issue, right? And so you already have the skill sets, you're already doing it. You're not doing it maybe in a political government way. And that to me is like, find the issue that you care about and Google it, and you will find a find a group. And I promise you most people are really friendly, right? So if you really care about climate change, you have the Sunrise Movement, who are, you know, organizing all over the place. I really have always really cared about voter registration and voter education and voter involvement. And so for 10 years, I've gone outside of when we used to meet in public, but you have naturalization event ceremonies throughout the state, and they have them in Faneuil Hall. And I would go outside with Mira, like an immigration advocacy organization, with clipboard and voter registration forms. And as people literally came outside of Faneuil Hall with their flag and their pin, making them an American citizen, I'd register them to vote, you know, and that was just through an organization that I really cared about. And so I think find those organizations, find those issues, you know, again, find a candidate, call the candidate, call and say, I want to help you. What can I do? And sometimes you're stuffing envelopes and sometimes you're making calls. And then when they see that you're really qualified and you have all those skill sets, like maybe you become someone's treasurer, because we all need treasurers, and maybe you're really good at doing the books. You know, my sister works for a big company. She trains people, but she is amazing at making phone calls. She will never knock a door for me, but she will write me a check and she will do my calls like no tomorrow. Like she will convince people to vote for me. And that's her skill set. And so we've all kind of got those organizing skill sets. It's just finding the issue that you care about. So I'm just pushing back, because I think we all are organizers at heart, you know. And I think back to when I was in high school and did student government, or I, you know, organized field trips. Like I did all of that stuff, but like I didn't necessarily consider it organizing. I think sometimes organizing is a word we've kind of, you know, you need to kind of be like AOC or Ayana. And yes, they are great organizers, but we all have that in us. So that's my answer to that question.
I couldn't agree more with the councilwoman. You know, I think, Catherine, you know, what I would say to add to what the councilwoman said is, what is your passion, right? What is your passion? What's really in your, like, what's really drives you, that you feel that can bring positive change, either in your community or in people's lives. You know, the first step is looking at how, looking at what's happening in your backyard, you know? And so me, when I started, it was more about the African community, but also more really, I look at the nation, right? With BLM, Black Lives Matter, right? Got involved in that in terms of, you know, looking at policies and what we can do as a community to change it. And so you are an organizer. You just have to push yourself to really embrace and see the passion behind it and go for it.
Awesome, thank you. Does anyone else have a question? I know Saida, you mentioned you had one. Oh, there's one in the chat actually. Unless you asked yours, Saida, and then we'll get to this one.
Okay, so I just think this might be helpful for like young people who are like POC women, like from disenfranchised background. Like I love hearing your story, Isaac. I'm also an immigrant, and so yes. I think like what advice do you guys have for like people? Like I know when I was young, I did have a hard time kind of finding communities that would still allow me in, even though I was advocating for my own issues, if that makes sense. So like, if you guys have some advice for people like me.
Councilwoman?
Oh, I was going to go to you first.
I wanted you to go.
I'm only a kid of immigrant, so yeah, I think getting your foot in the door is never easy, right? And as POC and kind of non-establishment, like all, you know, organizing is to make change. And change is really hard. Like that's my biggest lesson that I learned of being like a local elected is people were like, what's the hardest thing you've dealt with? And I can deal with the names like being called. And that's, you know, part of organizing. And I can deal with getting yelled at. I can deal with the emails. But the hardest was realizing that there's such a resistance to change because you are threatening people of status quo is just easy. It is easy not to change how you're doing, right? And if the system works for you, then why do you want to change it? And it took me a little bit, and I felt like I did this for a living, but to realize that me as a brown Muslim woman, I was going to be a threat to that. And so I was not, if you Google Selectmen, like, it is not a picture of me. It is a picture of 3 older white guys. And so just by who I was, before I even opened my mouth, people would see me as a threat. And then they were resistant, like right away. There was a wall of, you're taking away something from us, right? And there's that meme that always goes around that it's not a pie. Like, we have equality and justice for everyone. There's not limited just for certain people. So I think, we have not solved it, but I do think on some of our intersectional issues, we are better about allowing people who are not traditional getting involved. And I think, we know that it's tougher, but we just have to keep on pushing. I think what I say to my, to white people and people that are kind of from establishment, and you have that privilege, and to acknowledge that you have that privilege, but also, and Ayanna Pressley says this all the time. She started recently saying this, and I love it, is that she's like, I don't need any more allies. I need co-conspirators. And that to me is what, like, being an ally and saying that you support it, and like, hey, Mehreen, I support you. That's great. That's great. Now be a co-conspirator and write me a check. And now go knock on 100 doors for me. Like, go call all your friends and tell them to, like, take them to the voting place for me, right? And same thing with my issues. Like, it is fine to be an ally, and I can be an ally in a lot of issues, but what does it mean to be a co-conspirator? It means that I'm going to, listen to the leaders in movement and support them in what they need, but actually act, not join a book club, not listen to a podcast, but actually, like, have action involved, which is what I think, organizing is. But so that's, like, I think from and just like, I share this story often, and I referenced it early, but when I decided to run for office, I went to tell my parents, and my parents are, immigrants from Pakistan. My dad's a physician and worked really hard to give their kids, the American dream. And I was like, Dad, I think I'm going to run for Wakefield Selectman. And he was like, so what does it pay? I was like, it's a volunteer job. It doesn't pay anything. And he literally walked away. He's like, I don't know why you keep on doing these things. And as he's like walking away, I want to be like, it's because it's like the right thing to do. And I want to save the world. And I need to be the voice for the people that don't have the voice. But he's like walking away. And I drive home, and I was just like, really upset, because I was going to do this thing and worried I didn't have their support. And the next day my dad calls me, and he's like, I looked it up, and like, a lot of elected officials have law degrees. And I was like, yeah, like, they do. And he's like, so it's not that weird what you're doing. And I was like, no, it's not that weird. And I joke, my dad like put together all my signs, like they were like my super champions. But as immigrants, like, why would you get into politics? Like, people are mean. People are going to look into everything that you do. Like, what's the point? And, I had to connect the dots for them, just like I had to do to a lot of people, of like why local government is important and why voting in local elections is important. And I do think we have a different hurdle for, non-establishment people. So people, young voters who don't vote. I mean, you guys your age group barely gets 10% out to vote, right? And to people of color, to immigrant populations, we don't vote at the numbers. And I think it's because we don't see, we still have to work on the value add. So I share that story, and I feel like one day it'll get back to my dad, and he'll be like, that's not how I remember it, but it was what happened.
I'm sorry, Sandra. Can you repeat your question again, please? I'm so sorry. I love her. I love her. It was so beautiful. I just
It's completely fine. So yeah, I was just saying, like, for people like me, like, as an immigrant and someone who is from a disenfranchised background, I know it was hard for me to get my foot in the door for like a lot of different organizing. So like, what advice do you have for people who are struggling right now, who are from a disenfranchised background?
Don't be scared. Don't be scared because you belong. You belong here. You belong here. And so, when I first started organizing as an immigrant myself, right, as a young kid, I was nervous. I'm from Ghana, right? I had an accent. I wasn't adapting to the Worcester, Boston, Kai. I wasn't adapting to all that kind of stuff. I had an accent. But what really drove me was I thought about my parents, right? I thought about their future. I thought about the fact that, they worked hard and came to the U.S., but when, thriving. So I figured to just go out and just get involved. I figured to just look at the man who signs a check, the man who approves the laws and makes laws happen. I figured to go and join the campaigns and step up. I did not, it wasn't a sect that I think about, as an immigrant. I didn't think about that, right? I was like, I'm American, right? But American who's driven to bring change and solution in my community. And so don't ever think that you don't belong, because you do. And don't ever shy away because, your leaders are not there to hear your voice. They are. Like the council member said, it's about the fact that who brings change. I know that sometimes as immigrants we get scared. We get very scared because we don't know how to speak up. Some people were like, no, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get involved. I'll give you one example. I was working on a campaign in Oklahoma for this first Ghanaian guy called Joe Caesar Amoa. He ran for Congressional District of Oklahoma 1. And I was talking to his team about what we can do to bring change and what we can do to get him elected. And there was one particular person who was backing him up. And, this person was an immigrant, was scared, didn't want to speak up. Told them that, hey, listen, you don't have to be scared because if he's elected, you can ask him questions and get him to advocate for your behalf. And so my advice would say, don't be scared, go for it. You belong here.
So Elizabeth has a question about some tips to organize during COVID when you can't use traditional methods. And that's a really great question because it's been almost a year in this environment. So I actually think COVID's been really useful for organizing, surprisingly. So, so COVID, my election was supposed to be in April and it got postponed to June. But, I did calls to get out the vote. And because everyone was home, and that never happens. We were having 60% contact rates, calling. And so it was really, we were like, let's use this, people are home. So I wasn't knocking on doors, but I was able to use the phone more, and mail was people loved getting mail because they, were so bored and wanted human interaction, and were reading our local paper front to back. So if you put a story in there, I would get calls and be like, great article. And I was really deliberate about, what we put in the news. So I think, traditionally you can't go door to door, but I think we have such great communication Zoom and texting. I can't, that those are all what campaigns use. I think we've gotten really good at using videos and conveying stories in different way, which I actually think has let us be more creative about stuff. So, I worked on the ROAC through Planned Parenthood, which was to get expand abortion access throughout the state of Massachusetts. And the whole second year of the campaign was virtual, but we had events with 500 people. And, just like this, but we were able to really organize. And what's great is because everyone's in this world, right? We got amazing speakers. So we got Senator Warren and Senator Markey to join us because they're sitting in their living room, just like the rest of us. So, I think it's shifted a little bit, and you just have to think about it. It's campaigns are definitely less expensive right now, because you're not paying people to like go door to door. It's not so safe. Some campaigns have started doing that, but I think we've done a good job finding other ways. There's a lot, like I door knocked in New Hampshire, and you know, we just let literature at the door and then left. You didn't have conversations, but you know, it seemed to work the way that I wanted it to work. So let's say, but like postcards, I mean, postcards, like when you traditionally run campaigns, postcards are like the least amount of success. But like, I really think people in Georgia and Pennsylvania enjoyed getting those postcards from all of us, right? And it reminded them to go out and vote. And, you know, the like political analyst in me is like, was it really successful, or did it just make me feel good to write 100 postcards and feel like I was doing something to save democracy? But I was like, but it worked. And so I'm just going to use that as a victory.
I couldn't agree more with Councilwoman. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, postcards, Zoom meetings, you know, doing the whole text and chain is one way to organize. So I couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all we have for questions. If you guys have any final thoughts that you'd like to share before, or I just want to say thank you for both of you for coming. I know, like, as a young person and you want to make all these changes, you see all this stuff going on and you're like, oh, I want to change that. I want to fix this. I want to make it better. And you're like, but like everything is so big and seems so complex. But like, so hearing from people who have been doing this and have done it, and like you realize it's, you know, it's just one step at a time. It's one phone call, it's one meeting. And so building that up, it isn't as scary as it seems. So thank you both so much for coming, sharing your stories and instilling your wisdom. So thank you again.
Thank you guys so much. We're gonna just go back and promo our next session. But thank you guys so much. It was amazing to hear. And so come back next week for activating the actors. Elizabeth can give you a little bit of description on that.
Yeah, so we'll be hearing from a political science professor and then also a legislative aide as to like who are the actors, like who are the people that we need to reach out to contact, how to get their attention, what methods work best. So we will be doing that next Tuesday at 7. So please join. It's the second of the 8-part series, and throughout all of this, we really just hope that, like, as students, we can walk away more confident, more skilled on, you know, how to get moving and how to get advocating and make some change. So have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. As always, follow us at Suffolk Votes. We'll be posting all the events and keeping up with that, so you can find the Zooms there as well. So yeah, have a great night.